Hello, CPAC. I'm Dana Perino. I think the voice of God just said that. I'm the former White House press secretary, the co-host of Fox News, The Five. I am the mother of Jasper, America's dog. I was going to bring him with me and just have him stand behind me awkwardly, staring off into the middle distance for a while, but I thought that might be a little awkward for all of us, so I didn't. A lot of you might think I'm married to my dog, but alas, I am not. The dog has a father. He's my husband, Peter McMahon, who got to join me, so I wanted to recognize him. I also want to thank CPAC President Matt Schlapp and his wife, Mercy. They invited me here. I'm honored to be in front of you. They are friends of mine. We go way back. I remember when we were back in the White House, there were days when we were shaking our darned heads before that was even an acronym on Twitter. They're also the kind of people who will call you when you need it most and to remind you that prayer restores the soul and can keep your good humor. They met during the Bush administration and have 5 daughters. And I always call all the Bush marriage children the Bush babies. And so I want to thank them. This is a great event, and they've done such a great job with CPAC throughout the year. I also want to thank Sean Desmond, my excellent book editor of And the Good News Is. He believed in the book before I did, and he had us a chance to be here today as well. And then there's Fox News, where I found a home after I left the White House. Rather than that of a spokesperson for the leader of the free world, I became a spokesperson for myself. And the Five is in its 5th year. It is as unpredictable and fun as you can imagine. We want to thank all of our fans. We pride ourselves on being a very interactive show. We like to talk with you all day long, but especially during those crazy commercial breaks that we really wish we could show you, but if we did, they wouldn't be as crazy as they are. It's an unscripted show, and I was lucky to sneak out because, in case you hadn't noticed, we're in the middle of a primary season that's keeping us very busy. But because they couldn't be here with me, they have a little message for you, and I think we've got some video. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Eric Bolling, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five.
Socialism is a doctor who knows the cure is freedom, but suffocates the patient with a pillow anyway.
Presidential politics at this stage of the game and the race are about 2 things: momentum and time.
You have somebody like Hillary Clinton putting her own convenience ahead of the national security.
If I were in some sort of legal trouble, I would call Hillary Clinton to find out how do you get out of it.
Nice.
They've got to understand social media is a front in this war.
I'm a feminist. You know I am.
No, you're effeminate. You're effeminate, not
All right.
The young Democrats are going to get really mad when they start to realize how the game is fixed for Hillary Clinton on the delegate portion.
When you say, hey, you know, women who don't help women can go to hell, I mean, that's pretty strong to my heart.
Like at The Five, my feet do not touch the ground.
Oh, my God.
On your marks, get set, go!
What does a nosy pepper do? Ring the bell?
It's jalapeno business.
What?
Hi, everybody at CPAC from the set of The Five, where we would love to have you join us and watch our show. The election coverage is great, and all the other antics are really fun, too. Right, Eric?
Hey, CPAC, so proud of your conservative collective voice. Really appreciate that. Open up a can of whoop on the liberals and crush it.
Oh, my God. Did you hear what he said? Come on.
Yeah, we heard what he said.
Look at this. I'm going to tell you, CPAC, my son is often in your company, a Republican. But anyway, no whoop. Please, Eric, please. Not on Dad.
KG, what do you have to say?
CPAC, thanks for your courage, your fearlessness, and helping to make this country the best in the world. We love what you do. Keep up the great work.
And Gutfeld?
CPAC, I love you. You cleared up 3 days of an embarrassing rash. Oh, CPAC, I'm sorry.
Thanks to my friends, my co-hosts, and for everybody at Fox News who gave me a chance to be there. It certainly is a great way to spend an afternoon every day. One of the reasons that I wrote And the Good News Is was to talk to conservative kids all across the country. You know, I grew up on a cattle ranch in Wyoming, and then in Denver, Colorado, or just outside in the rural part of Parker, Colorado. And then I ended up being the first Republican woman to serve as the White House press secretary. And I could not be more grateful for those opportunities. And I want young people to know that your horizons are much broader than you might first consider. And I never, when I was sitting on the barnyard fence, I never thought I was going to then be sitting on Marine One with the President of the United States, but that's one of the great things about America. And today we're going to talk about millennials and how conservative ideals and values can meet millennials' goals. And I remember what it's like, millennials, for those of you here, remember what it's like that first week on the job and you're excited about it and how humbling that can be. And actually, when I was the acting press secretary, I had a chance to fill in for Tony Snow. Unfortunately, Tony Snow is no longer with us. He died in 2008 due to complications of cancer. He was the press secretary and I was the deputy. But I had to step up to the podium and I got a very humbling experience. I didn't cause any problems. The president didn't get mad at me. I didn't start an international incident. But I got to the podium and Tony Snow was 6'5". I am not. The podium had been built for him. And the night before I was to take over, I got a note saying, or a knock on my door. Carlton Carroll said, "Ma'am, do you think we should have them build you a new podium?" I said, "Oh, that's such a waste of taxpayer dollars. No, no, no. Let me just stand on an apple box and it'll be fine." So I did that for a week. Next Friday night, knock on my door. "Ma'am, I really think that we need to make you a new podium for Monday." And I said, "Well, that's crazy. We're traveling next week and then Tony's going to be back." And he said, "Well, actually, NBC News showed me the camera shot from the back of the room. And when you're at Tony Snow's podium, standing on the apple box, the seal above your head does not say the White House. It says the White Hoe." For a week. I have hundreds of stories like that one from my White House days. But I had an incredible boss who I truly believed in and could learn from every day and made my time in the administration just the greatest experience of my lifetime. I got to know President Bush as well when I was the deputy press secretary. You know, the deputy works holidays, weekends, late nights, early mornings, and I always advise millennials, take the deputy job if it's offered to you. That is where you learn how to be the boss one day. I remember, I was just mentioning growing up in rural America, one of the things my dad did with me as a kid, and maybe you could do this with your children or your future children. Every day, before he got home from work, when I was in the 3rd grade, I had to read the Rocky Mountain News and the Denver Post before he got home from work. And I had to pick out 2 articles to discuss with him before dinner. And that was a really great learning experience for me because later on, then I'm sitting on Marine One, and I remember distinctly one time being on the chopper and the president asked me my opinion about something. And I gave my opinion, and I knew it was unpopular with the rest of the senior staff. And he was quiet about it for a minute, and he looked out the window. It wasn't something he really wanted to hear. And after about 5 minutes, he turned around to the rest of the guys that were sitting on the bench, and he said, "She's exactly right." And of course, you know I love to hear that, that I'm right. And so I offer that as a way to get people engaged early on. And there's so many different ways to do that now. I don't know anybody who still reads the old-fashioned newspaper like I do, but it was a great experience for me to get that confidence. And then living life with sort of a gentle sense of humor has been a plus for me too. As you think about what candidate you're going to support, one of the things I always found is that if I can connect with somebody's humor, it helps. In 2000, George W. Bush was being interviewed by Barbara Walters, and she says, "Governor Bush, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?" And he said, "Well, Barbara, I'm not a tree, I'm a bush." Humility, gratitude, and character. Those are the themes of my book. Those are the themes of my life, and they really are the themes to conservatism. I want to leave you with this before we move to the panel. In my book, on chapter 7, I have a chapter there called Unafraid to be Right. It answers this question, why am I a conservative? Now, that's a question I get a lot. And I don't know if liberals actually have to answer that as if being a conservative is some aberration, but it's usually asked like this: how could you possibly be a Republican or a conservative? And it actually comes quite easy to me. Conservatism, by its very nature, is compassionate. That's one of the things that drew me to President George W. Bush. Okay, we can clap for that. Compassion. I respect tradition, I learn from history, and adhere to a code of ethics that has helped me make sense of the world. I have standards, and I stick to them. For instance, conservatism is where I can fully express my support in the individual rather than the state or the government, and where my belief in self-governance and responsibility is not in conflict with the policies that I support. Conservative characters are everywhere in the media, but being a conservative has given me clarity, and it's given me freedom. My mind is free, my heart is lighter, and that is a gift from God that I believe we have an obligation to share with others around the country and the world. Besides, I love to be right. You can just ask Peter that. Just kidding. Now, I think we are going to bring out our panel, because millennials, what are we going to do with you? You take a bad rap, but I'm not going to join in on that. I actually love you. This election is very interesting to me. There's 5 distinct generations that are headed to the polls. You have the greatest generation, I'm sorry, 4. Silent generation, the baby boomers, Generation X, and millennials. All of these groups see the world differently. They understand the world differently, and the way that they communicate is very different. Millennials are now 1/4 of the population, overtaking even baby boomers in number at over 83 million people. This is critical, and how we shape their lives, how conservative values meet their goals is so important. So let me introduce my esteemed panel. They're going to come out here and sit, and then I'm going to grill them. Rob Bluey's Vice President of Publishing at the Heritage Foundation and Editor-in-Chief of the Daily Signal, the think tank's multimedia news organization. He joined Heritage in 2007. Benny Johnson is obsessed, he says, with the intersection of politics and the social web. He is the creative director for IJ Review, and he works day to day on figuring out how to make storytelling in politics very interesting. Here he is, Benny Johnson. And Katie Pavlik, editor of Town Hall magazine, townhall.com, I'm sorry, a Fox News contributor, and she is also the author of the New York Times bestseller Fast and Furious, Barack Obama's Bloodiest Scandal and Its Shameless Cover-Up. And she is carrying a flat Jasper.
This is not Chris Christie. Jasper.
Interesting.
So Jasper would have loved to have come, but this is the best that we could do. All right, we have limited time and a lot to cover, but I thought we're going to do okay. We have 22 minutes. Rob, let me start with you.
Yes.
One of the statistics that bothers me the most is that many millennials, a majority, you sent me a poll this week, many millennials no longer believe in the American dream. So I want to start there. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think as we've seen, Dana, the challenge with millennials is they don't really have faith in institutions. So so churches, for instance, to organize religion, families, they're delaying the process of getting married, having children. They don't trust the news media. Well, who does, right? I mean, it's not surprising that millennials.
It's even worse than Congress.
Correct, and I think for first and foremost, you have the government. This is a generation that has grown up hearing that they are going to be the first time that they're not better off than their parents.
Yeah.
And when you grow up hearing that, you probably are not going to have the faith and the positive spirit about the American dream that other generations have had, especially when you're paying into Social Security, you're paying into these entitlement programs, and you know that they're probably not going to be there for you.
So, Benny, let me ask you then, given that, then how can the Republican Party or conservatives reach millennials and either try to change that thinking or tell them that there's a different and better way and a brighter future for them?
Yeah. First off, thank you guys so much for having us. I'm a huge fan of the movie Zoolander, and that is the first runway I've ever walked.
Oh,
and
how'd it go?
So I feel like doing Blue Steel right now, but I'll spare you all.
Come on. Do it. Do it.
That's it. That was my answer.
So Storytelling. Tell me about storytelling.
So,
today.
okay, so how do you reach millennials? How does anybody reach millennials? How do you reach this like fickle group of people? I mean, look at us. We're at CPAC, right? This is the best, biggest, most wonderful conference, very important. And the first thing that happened with two of these panelists is we took out our phones on stage and checked them. Katie and I both did, right? We're a part of this generation, and this generation functionally being people that were born from 1980 all the way up to the year 2000. So that's the 20-year block that you call a millennial. How do you reach that person? It's incredibly hard, actually, for anyone, conservative, Democrat, Pepsi, Coke. It's really hard to meet millennials because our tastes are extremely unpredictable. The internet has helped out a lot with this. Dana, let's say that you were a Madison Avenue executive.
Okay.
And I came in with a cat. And I said, Dana, this cat has an underbite.
Oh.
You and I are going to take this cat with an underbite, and we're going to turn it into a $100 million business entity. And we're going to get rich. And that's it.
That's what I would say.
What would you do?
Wait, well, am I my age?
I'm
as the
pitching
Madison Avenue
you the cat with the underbite.
The cat with the I would say you're crazy and get out of my office. And then
you-
you would go and make $100 million on your own. And I would lose out on what, Grumpy Cat?
Yep. Can we get a round of applause? She knew.
Did I hear Grumpy Cat?
I mean, but that's crazy, right? Whoever thought that Rebecca Black, what song did she sing?
Friday.
Listen to everyone can say Friday. Everyone knows this song. Is she a beautiful singer? Is she talented? Does she have a lot more YouTube views than you do? And a lot more money? And that's because we all collectively decided to make Rebecca Black famous, as we did with the cat with the underbite. And so these are like fascinating perspectives of how a world's upside down and how millennials cannot be predictable. And sometimes the quirkiest and most unrelated things really play with millennials. So
They appreciate that authenticity that I think he's speaking of.
yeah.
At the same time, Katie, the millennials are coming up with Grumpy Cat and making $100 million, but they're living in a very dangerous world. You know, this morning it was announced that Spanish officials in Madrid found 20,000 police uniforms that were about to be sent over to be utilized by ISIS. So meanwhile, all of this is happening, there are national security concerns, and do you think that conservatives actually address those concerns better than the alternative?
Well, I always call myself the grumpy millennial, and I don't think I can make $100.
Are you trying to make $100 million?
I don't think I can make $100 million off of being the grumpy millennial, but I'm gonna try. No, I think, the millennial generation is great in terms of, we're so innovative and so individual, and these things that could never have done the things that they did before are amazing successes. The flip side of that is oftentimes it feels like we're not focusing on serious issues. Foreign policy and terrorism being one of them. And the millennial generation is interesting in terms of foreign policy because they feel like they're frustrated because they feel like older generations are living in the past. They say, we're not in the Cold War anymore. We want to embrace other nations. We're not afraid of China. We're not afraid of Russia. We're not afraid of Cuba. They want to be more interactive with those countries rather than separate and enemies with those countries. They're not afraid of state governments, for example. They are concerned about terrorism, and I think that 9/11 has a lot to do with that. And the Cato Institute actually did a white paper on millennials and foreign policy, and it showed that while millennials still see 9/11 as a historic event, the reaction to 9/11 is an interesting one because they see terrorism as a problem and something that we need to handle and something that they have overseas now. It's not something that is here anymore necessarily. We haven't had a large-scale attack, thank God. Hopefully we will not. It's something that is dealt with in another place. But at the same time that they're concerned about it and they want to defeat terrorism, they're very concerned about the way that we do it. So they don't want intervention, unnecessary military intervention. The Iraq and Afghanistan wars have had a very big impact on the way millennials feel about war in general. The NSA has been a huge issue when it comes to millennials and how they feel about their privacy rights. Edward Snowden, of course, is a very controversial topic. A lot of millennials support him. A lot of millennials don't. And then the final thing is millennials just seem to be less, the Cato Institute put it as less patriotic. I mean, only 38% of millennials see the United States as being the best country in the world. whereas Generation X, there's 48% of them who feel the US is the best country in the world, and then you keep going up from there, and the greatest generation, of course, 64% think that America is the greatest in the world. So there is kind of this globalization that's going on in terms of how millennials feel about working with other countries who used to be our enemies, and I think that actually has to do a lot with the economy. But they are concerned about terrorism, but they're also concerned about the solution and how it impacts their own personal, their civil rights and their privacy.
Since we have enough time, I want to explore something that we are going to do in the lightning round, but I think it is worth talking about a little bit more. I was going to ask them in the lightning round, what do you think is the most defining moment in a millennial's life so far that has helped define their political views? And I'd like Benny to give the answer, and then I want to follow up with a question to Rob about student loan debt, because I think those two things are pretty interesting. So if you could start.
Did everybody see Chris Christie standing behind Donald Trump? Screaming internally, right? Staring into the abyss. Right? Chris Christie, good guy. Hi. Yeah, this.
Just staring.
I think that the sentiment that Chris Christie was trying to do, what he was trying to tell us with his eyes, is what every millennial thinks about when they see their first paycheck. And when it's probably a job you worked really hard on, right? It's probably cutting grass, or at the Dairy Queen, or at Wawa, or somewhere. You worked your fingers to the bone. You were a waiter or some type of manual labor job, and you look at how much of your probably minimum wage salary is taken away. And I think that is a tremendous staring into the abyss, screaming internally moment for millennials. And you see a lot of move towards economic freedom in the millennial population. I'm very encouraged by it. But if you're talking about something that we all have in common, right, which is something that's very important to millennials, to feel like they have something in common with those around them, getting that giant chunk taken from you, and goes to to Social Security. Anyone under the age of 30, raise your hand if you think you'll get Social Security.
There's one over here.
Just one.
Oh, it's Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders is not 30.
I'm sorry about this rambling response. I would just say that's really important to millennials, and I think that's something we all have in common. And it's something that wherever you come from, whatever side of the perspective you are, except for Bernie Sanders over there, that's something that you look at and you go, wow, that's kind of unfair.
So, Rob, if you could broaden out a little bit, because we mentioned Bernie Sanders. There are reports that millennials are kind of attracted to this idea of socialism. And if you could talk a little bit about the socialism piece and the student loan debt problem in one, that would be great.
Yeah, so obviously there's the old saying that when you're young, you're going to be attracted to the more liberal point of view. When you get older, you'll become more wise and move over to the right. Obviously, based on the sentiment we just heard, we have conservative millennials with us today, fortunately. And I do think when it comes to the attraction to a candidate who is espousing socialist views, I think, let's face it, a lot of them probably have gone through 4 years or more of a college education where they're not even hearing a conservative perspective on college campuses.
Or not allowed to.
They're not allowed to, yeah. And if you look at the debate that's played out on college campuses over the last year, you see what happens to conservatives in situations where they do try to speak out or they try to bring a conservative point of view on campus. So that's a challenge. I mean, I experienced myself at my own college in Ithaca, New York, where you had literally communist professors who were proud to wear that badge of honor in the politics department. On the bigger issue of student loan debt, yes, you're absolutely correct. I think that is driving some of this anxiety, this frustration, this sentiment toward the American dream, because if you're coming out of 4 years of college or more and you're carrying these huge loans, and as Benny just said, you're looking at your first paycheck and you're seeing how much the government is taking, why wouldn't you have a pessimistic view of the world? And that's where I think you have candidates like Sanders, who's espousing free education, who wants to forgive student loan debt. those things probably are appealing to some millennials, I would imagine, because they just want to overcome that
But are
burden.
there conservative alternatives and policies and suggestions that actually are a better solution on student loans?
Well, I'd say it starts with personal responsibility, so let's take the government out of it. I think the baby boomer generation should and can still instill a view in their children that yes, they have to work hard, they have to save money, and maybe not everybody needs to go to a four-year college that is costing a ridiculous amount of money.
And I would add to that, while we've had a lot of frustration in Washington, D.C. about nothing happening, the fact is that Republican governors around the country have done a lot. Republican legislatures around the country have done a lot. And it's time for Republican legislatures at the state level to hold state universities accountable for the products that they produce. Because they're giving kids these $100,000 loans when they're 18 years old, and they're not saying what they're buying. So they're buying these worthless degrees that they had no chance of ever paying back anyway, and that's if they got a job coming out of college. I think a lot of the reason why we're seeing the millennials now embracing socialism, even though they don't really know what that means when you pull deeper into their understanding of socialism, because it's completely opposite of what they believe in. I mean, socialism limits choice and individualism. It doesn't expand it, but yet they don't seem to understand that. Back to the point of college, they get out of college with $100,000 in debt. And for the past 8 years under Barack Obama, the unemployment rate for millennials and the labor participation rate is lower than it's ever been since World War II. I mean, millennials can't find a job. So you go through the first 10 years of your life after you get out of college, by the way. It's not a time to find your way or to decide in your 30s you're gonna maybe get started with a career. Your first 10 years of your life as a young person actually determine your wage earnings for the rest of your life. I mean, there's plenty of data to support that. And you have an entire block of the millennial generation for 8 years under Obama coming out of college into an economy where they have to be in this cycle of dependency because they can't find a job in the first place to pay off the loans that they took out on a degree, which was never going to pay for it anyway.
I'm going to try one other topic, and I'm not going to, whoever wants this first can go first, and anyone that wants to comment on it can. According to the Associated Press, there have been a 12% nationwide decline in abortions administered since 2010, including in pro-choice states like New York, Washington State, and Oregon. There are also polls out there that cite millennials as more pro-life than their parents, with only 24% of millennials wanting to keep it legal in all cases. And for any of you that want to take that on, how important is that, and do you see that as growing, and is it because of technology and science?
I think it absolutely is. I'm the father of 2 children. I can tell you when you see that ultrasound and you have that experience, which I think previous generations didn't have access to that because either the technology didn't exist or doctor's office didn't have the machine. So that changes a lot of people's views right there. And I think that that's a great thing. You now have pregnancy centers that have set up across from Planned Parenthood or other abortion clinics that are purposely there to give women another option where they can discuss what is confronting them if they're in a challenging situation. So I think technology plays a huge role.
Yeah, and I would say, science is something that the left accuses the right of not embracing. But on the pro-life issue, conservatives certainly do. Excuse me. And I think, I need water, sorry. I'm kind of sick, so take in.
Okay, I'll take it from her. She was going to say, Benny, you look great today. How did you get those skinny, skinny jeans? I'm not really going to comment on this. I'm not a woman, but I would say that I would say that a fascinating foil, an interesting foil, and you should try it sometime. I haven't yet, but I think an interesting foil would be, why do you believe in global warming? Said Democrat says, because the science backs it up. The follow-up question would be, then when does life begin? And you should just leave it open-ended and let it answer.
Yeah.
Because there's science, and lucky for us, there's science in a lot of different perspectives. And Rob, father of 2, he probably saw his child's fingers and beating heart.
Yeah, I would follow up now that I'm not acting like Marco Rubio, which I might in a minute. Donald Trump would make fun of me for drinking water. I would also say
Don't make fun of the size of my hands.
Yeah, a big part of it is I think that the pro-choice movement has really jumped the shark. I mean, millennials believe in humanity. And I think we saw in the Super Bowl with NARAL freaking out over the Doritos commercial, which dared to humanize a baby inside the womb, really shows how extreme they are when it comes to human life. And Benny talked about how millennials take in information in stories online on the internet, and that story was something that went viral because it was so ridiculous that they would be upset about the fact that Doritos is showing the reality of a child, and they're upset about it. So I'm excited that the millennial generation is pro-life. I think that science has been on our side for a long time on that issue. And I will say that just because you're a man doesn't mean you're not allowed to have an opinion on the issue either. And it's nice to see that millennial men have stepped up.
All right, so in the 4 minutes we have left, I'm going to do a little bit of a lightning round. So you know what lightning round means?
Best.
Remember earlier I said my dad had me read the Rocky Mountain News and the Denver Post. These are the hard copy newspapers. We got the hard copy magazines of all of them. We were a big news consumer type of family. The three of you have multiple ways that you communicate and out with mediums that didn't exist. Some of them not even like 2 years ago. I don't know how old the Daily Signal is, but it's a great outlet. And IJ Review, amazing. Townhall.com plus Fox plus books. There's all sorts of different ways on your social media to comment. If you could take over the RNC social media for a week, what would you do? Benny, we'll start with you.
Well,
The lightning round, Benny. Come on.
I would follow all the Kardashians.
Okay, that's a great answer. Katie, do you want to mention something? You thought you did something
I actually
good
think
yesterday.
the RNC's been doing a pretty good job of trolling Hillary Clinton. Yesterday, they replied to a tweet of hers with, you know how the FBI wears their windbreakers and they have the big yellow FBI letters on the back? So they just sent a picture of that and said, hey.
Yeah. The visuals are so important.
Yeah,
right?
I liked it.
Do you have an answer on that one?
I'd put Benny in charge. I mean, look at the stuff he's doing at Independent Journal Review. I mean, it's cool, it's fun, it's hip, it's what millennials are craving.
They said they had a video really fast. Do you guys want to see a quick video?
Oh,
Really
we
short?
do. I'm sorry. It said we have the video. I'm like, I already played the video.
I don't
Okay,
know
yes,
if
let's see
I don't
a
know
video.
if we can set it up, but
There it is.
Donald Trump gave out Lindsey Graham's cell phone number, and this is what we did to respond to that.
Effective.
You can
And you
always
know
give
what,
your
Benny?
number to the Donalds.
Is that a flip phone?
That's a flip
This is
phone.
for
Lindsey
all
Graham
the
has a flip
veterans.
phone. He says this is for the veterans, and he chucks it. So if you want
Right.
my response, it's that we
effective.
followed the principles of virality that we understand, which is that people want something unexpected. Donald Trump, as you remember, gave out Lindsey Graham's cell phone number to
Yeah.
the world. And this is the way that he chose to respond. This is our version of an interview. And he was able to relay his feelings at that moment. And that ended up doing 3.5 million views. That ended up
But
getting
not only
shared.
that, it drove a lot of conversation. Like on our show, we talked about it. It got showed it was multiple times on traditional media as well.
If you go through the report, you'll see that 60 million people saw that video
That's great.
through broadcast or on the internet. And that was his response to Donald Trump being
Well, I think that is a
so.
good place to wrap it up. Before I say goodbye to them, I just want to appeal to you for a moment. I just want to remind you that all of the people that you are here with today, you are of like mind. There is a big tent. And also, especially for the young people, you are making friends here. These are not just contacts. You're not just networking to see if you can get someplace else in your life. I still communicate with the people that I worked with on Capitol Hill. I talk to them every day. They have been my friends. They help me in my work. And I would just encourage you to stay in touch, work together. You have all the tools at your fingertips to be able to do that. And you can make lifelong friends here today. I've already been friends with Rob and Katie for a long time. I can add Benny to my list. Thank you for this great millennial panel, and thank you, CPAC, for having us.
Amazing.
Thanks, Jasper.
Can we get a picture?
Oh, yeah, let's all take a selfie.